they were not going to review this game objective. Oh my God, can I talk? Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Now, we've seen video games, TV shows, movies, all built for the modern audience. And the vast majority of them have either failed outright or they've become a flop in the sense that they didn't live up anywhere near to their expectations or what's required of them to get any sort of return on investment there. So, excuse me. Oh, come on, Chichi baby. What you doing? You want to say hello? Say hello, people of the earth. I'm sorry. I know. So I saw this video by Hero Hey talking about the modern audience is falling apart, and I wanted to give it a listen to. So let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, she's gone. All right, let's go ahead and get into it.
Self-proclaimed writer/narrative consultant Jake Steinberg just made this absolutely insane post and piece about gamers saying, anyways, I wrote a piece yesterday about how anti-woke gamers are basically Nazis. Please.
Both in politics and in culture, they keep doing this, and they don't realize that this is not going to be a winning strategy for them. You cannot continue to call everybody who disagrees with you Nazis or racist or bigots or transphobes or homophobes. You cannot do that. You're going to push the vast majority of the people away because they are going to get sick and tired of hearing it. We saw that with the election.
Read and sub. How dare gamers criticize massive AAA corporations and DI practices? You're basically a Nazi if you do that. It's amazing how many of
How dare we criticize a corporation that makes billions of dollars?
These industry weirdos keep crawling out of the woodwork. This is clearly insane rhetoric, peak corpo bootlicker brain rot. I just talked about a similar thing yesterday where more of these sort of people were complaining about negative Veilguard reviews. It's like a daily occurrence where these corpos are complaining about gamers and using the most hyper
negative Veilguard reviews. Have you seen the positive ones? They all said the exact same phrase. Return to form, return to form, return to form, return to form. I mean, I was going to make a video on it, but I ended up not doing it. It's just I don't have enough time. But I'm sure somebody has made a video on this. If not, I'm sure you guys have at least seen it.
Parabolic, nonsensical arguments ever. So let's see what he says and break this down. I was streaming Dragon Age the Veilguard when someone popped into my chat. They declared that the game was, in their esteemed opinion, quote,
which it is,
pushing an agenda, unquote. They were fed up with the quote-unquote woke stuff, which in this case meant allowing players to pick their character's gender and sexuality.
No, I mean, look, in Baldur's Gate 3, you can be with who you want to be with. Hell, you can even make your character have boobs and a dick. I mean, the issue or the woke stuff in Veilguard is the fact that you're getting lectured. I mean, you sit down for a scene. I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen the scene, but Tosh, one of the main characters in the game, she sits down at the table with her parents. She goes, so I'm non-binary. And then they have this other scene talking about this birth or whatever and how it is bad to misgender people and how just saying you're sorry isn't enough. I mean, that's part of the issue with Veilguard, not to mention just the whole dialogue in and of itself is horrible.
Now, the Veilguard isn't exactly some radical new experiment. It's the latest in a series that's been around for 15 years. And choice has always been the whole point. You pick who you are, right down to what you say, who you trust, who you fight, who you fancy, the law.
I'm sorry, no other game has lectured you for being non-binary or misgendering somebody.
For as long as Dragon Age has been around, it's been a game about letting players imagine any character they want and go wild with it. Is this guy really trying to use that argument?
Yeah.
Veilguard doesn't actually do that. I'm actually really impressed that we're a mere 2 paragraphs into this thing, and he's already destroyed his own point. One example of this that's had some of the most discourse is how player use of blood magic was removed in Veilguard. We can see this broken down by Trick Weeks, who's a dev on Veilguard.
I've heard that they won't let you be outright evil in the game. So, I mean, that whole choice to do what you want, I guess, doesn't seem to fly.
Over on his Blue Sky account, he had this to say. Never say never. Blood magic is unlikely because we've shifted it from a power boost to really being the key to a lot of nasty stuff we aren't interested in having heroes do. The other stuff just needs the right game. If you're looking for more current posts about Veilguard from Trick Weeks, well, you'd be hard-pressed to find that over on his Blue Sky account, as it looks like he's moved on from talking about the game itself, to instead using his entire account just to complain about the US election. But enough of that. The blood magic thing was, once again, just one example that's had a lot of discourse, although we can see the same line of thought in removing blood magic, also reflected in many things in Veilguard. Returning to Jake Steinberg, he said, and that's the magic, isn't it? Talk to any fan of Dragon Age and you'll hear the same story. They get completely absorbed in it. You don't just play the game, you inhabit it. And when you're building this character, something as personal as their gender or who they might fall in love with feels like it should be a part of the deal.
And see, this is what I've been saying before. They keep talking about identity here, gender and all this other stuff. That's all these people care about. That's what they eat, sleep, and drink is identity politics. Everything to them has to be wrapped in identity politics. So they try to always make this argument that, oh, it was always woke, whether it be talking about a game or a long-running TV show like Doctor Who, for example, without realizing or understanding what it is people are actually complaining about. Because it's not the same. They have made changes to it for the worse.
For anyone who's sinking hours into becoming someone else, these little details make the whole thing feel real, complete. It's not about ticking boxes or quote-unquote pushing an agenda. It's about giving players the tools to build a world they can actually believe in, one that's got room for everyone's imagination. No, as we
they won't let you use blood magic because they don't want you being evil.
Discussed, it's pretty limiting actually. And in more ways than just the narrative choices that the player can make. Another big example was the criticism that people levied at the character creator, and how certain aspects of the player character's body was extremely limited. Many women in particular called this out because they were being told that Veilguard...
The boob sliders and the butt sliders, there was a lot of women complaining about this. Basically throwing their language back at these people, says, I don't feel represented here because my butt's not this small. My boobs aren't this small. I can't make a character that looks like me.
Had an extremely inclusive character creator, only for them to find out that the game wasn't inclusive to their bodies at all. Jake goes on to say, the thing is, Dragon Age didn't end up on the chopping block because it had done anything particularly shocking to upset the frail conservative mind. No, Dragon Age had been selected and targeted by a group of self-proclaimed quote-unquote anti-woke gamers, working as part of a movement known as Gamergate. This just seems like projection now. The guy wants to talk about fragile minds. And being a conservative and simply criticizing Veilguard doesn't make someone have a fragile mind. This dude complaining about it actually sounds more fragile. On top...
And a lot of times that's what I find to be the case, honestly. You can complain about something, that's fine. It's the other side that seems to really get triggered and they can't handle someone disagreeing with them. And usually that is going to be a sign of someone who's not very comfortable in their own skin, and they're very fragile. You know, there's a reason the term snowflake was invented not that long ago. Well, the words always existed, but you get my point.
On top of that, I've seen people all over the political spectrum also critiquing Veilguard. I've also seen LGBT people critiquing Veilguard. However, since that goes against the corpo agenda like Jake is pushing here, he'll probably never admit that. It's really funny.
Or he'll call them just racist, or, you know, like they do with black people, you know, Uncle Toms, or I don't know what other terms they have for like Latinos and whatnot. But I mean, just look at the election. You had a lot of black men and a lot of Latino men vote for Trump. And now all of the mainstream media is basically calling them out, saying they failed their own people, that they're essentially now white supremacists, they're racist, they're bigoted. If you don't fall in line and believe what they want you to believe, whether it's games, whether it's politics, whether it's the culture, you're nothing to them. You're trash, and they will treat you just like they treat any other trash. It doesn't matter. You know, they can sit here and proclaim, oh, I'm for minorities. I want to support the little guy. But then if that little guy doesn't walk the line and say what they want, they will grab that little guy and throw him right in the trash bin.
And hypocritical how people like Jake will pretend to be these wonderful social activists, while in reality being the quickest people to erase those that they claim to be defending. He then goes on to attempt to redefine Gamergate and complain a whole lot about it. This guy is rapidly becoming S tier at making bad takes. For example, here he attempts to say that anyone who critiques DEI policies is against a diverse gaming world. But in reality, many who make those critiques are not against diversity in gaming at all.
Movies, TV shows, gaming has always been diverse. Always has. You may not like it, or you may not want to acknowledge it because you're currently using identity politics as a cudgel to try to beat your opponents with and to get your way, essentially. Nobody is against diversity. We're against diversity in the way that you're currently trying to push it. And they can't handle that, so they just outright, again, try to insult you and say that you're a bigot or a racist or something like that.
The issue that we take with DEI is how hammer-fisted, fake, and preachy it is, as well as how corporations also use it as a shield to block their rampant corruption, and how
corporations don't care. I mean, look what they do in Pride Month. June 1st, they got a little rainbow emblem on their Twitter account. July 1st, it's gone. And during the Pride Month, the same company, when they have like a Saudi Arabia branch or something like that, or a branch somewhere else in the other world, in another part of the world that doesn't seem to bow to the feet of LGBT wokeness, their Twitter emblems, nope, doesn't change. It's the exact same year round. It's look, they don't care about you.
They are, both to gamers and at times their own employees and coworkers, as there's been numerous DEI advocates who were later exposed as literal predators. Once again, I gotta wonder why people like Jake and other advocates for DEI never acknowledge these very real issues. He once again then attempts to incorrectly categorize those who are involved with critiquing DEI, and goes on to say, I'll admit my run-in with Gamergate didn't start with Dragon Age the Veilguard. This year, thanks to my progressive views, I've become one of their targets. I was one of the first people tagged on a ridiculous hate list, curiously called quote-unquote Kotaku Detected, a list that exists for no other reason than to direct harassment at...
This list does not mean that it's meant for directly harassing people. I mean, come on. You're not dumb. You know what the list is meant to be. You just don't like it. Hence, you sit here and you essentially slander the list and anybody associated with it.
Everyone on it. The site's mission statement alone is enough to make your head hurt. It's a big, blustery declaration, all bark and no bite, revealing more about the weakness of its adherents than any purported strength. Well, let's take a look at this thing. It says, Kotaku Detected. List of folks who work, have worked, or are friends with Kotaku and beyond. Kotaku has turned into a more all-encompassing word for everything wrong with the video game industry. This page aims to become a comprehensive directory of individuals who work, have worked, or in some way related to Kotaku or other game companies that have become websites that have historically shown to care more about pushing activist agendas and narratives instead of conversations about video games.
Oh, that sounds very hateful.
The initial sections of this page include some of the worst writers, editors, and others who have contributed to the downfall of games journalism over the years for various reasons. Each entry provides relevant information for further research, including the...
You want to know why this list is required? Go back and see what happened with the Hogwarts game, Hogwarts Legacy or whatever it's called. There were news sites or game review sites that either chose not to review it because of their morals when it comes to transgender activists or transgender rights or whatever, or there's review sites that literally just gave it a 1, all because they didn't like J.R. Rowling. I mean, that's it. Even though she had nothing to do with the game, because they didn't like the author, they don't like Harry Potter anymore, and they are not going to review a game objectively. So they just either didn't review it or gave it a 1 because they can't get over their own mental freak out in their head. I mean, look, these people have something wrong with them. They really do.
Roles, articles, and or linked video or tweet explanations. Whether you are a researcher, enthusiast, or industry professional, this resource is designed to spotlight the people behind Kotaku's content and hold them accountable for their actions. For those who do not appear on the list, they have not committed any awful behavior publicly yet. Consider this a curation group, citing facts as my personal opinions. Your opinion may vary. All information provided on this page is sourced from easily located, publicly available information.
So how does this sound so hateful? I mean, this guy made it sound like it was going to be like a hit list or something.
Wait, so apparently that guy got a headache reading that, like made his head hurt or something? Yeah. Did he really not understand?
Well, if you've watched or listened to any of the current modern day shows or games and seen the dialogue and the story writing, yeah, I mean, it's like a fifth grader wrote it. So I'm sure this probably was a little hard for them to read, and they had to concentrate so much just to understand those words. Like historically, that's pretty big. That's got more than 5 letters in it. And then you have explanations. That's got more than 5 letters in it. You know, then you have, oh, here's a big one. This is 2 words combined, all encompassing. Just for them to read this, it was probably giving them a migraine. And Lord knows they probably had to look it up in a dictionary or a thesaurus or some other resource to help them understand what this meant.
And like what they were saying there. Oh, maybe it's the part where they talk about sourcing facts. Maybe that's the part that confused him. He then goes on to talk about why he doesn't understand why he's being brought up in this whole Kotaku thing. And to be fair, I don't either. I don't know anything about this guy except that he made this crazy article calling gamers Nazis. And I thought it would be funny to take a look at it, which is what we're doing. Speaking of which, here's the section where he begins comparing gamers to Nazis specifically. It looks like he's essentially trying to say that gamers criticizing Kotaku and other gaming journalists is basically the same thing as Nazis burning books. Literally says, Kotaku Detected resurrects this very tactic, digitized and crude, instead of a bonfire. We're now dealing with social media outrage and a race for YouTube views, making individuals the target instead of ideas, cranking up hostility rather than offering real critique. It pretends to be some kind of guardian of gaming's sacred ground, like a twisted echo of the so-called pure Germany.
They will attack you for disagreeing with them, but the moment they get any pushback, they are automatically the victim. And that's what he's doing here. He's like, I'm a victim. They're attacking me.
Bro, what the heck are you talking about? You sound like a nutcase.
Yes,
But
he
really,
is. All these people are nutcases. I'm telling you, all these people, both politically and within the game world, are nutcases because they're usually one and the same.
uses its accountability list to build walls, to shut people up, and to intimidate. It doesn't care about the truth. It just wants silence. The words might be different. The platforms might have changed, but the mission is the same: to wipe out any voices that threaten their narrow, scared worldview. Quit pretending this.
Yet we have politicians on one side of the aisle that are sitting here claiming that social media is too free, that we need to regulate it, we need to rein it in because misinformation is all over the place. Mainly because the person who owns it and has allowed free speech on the platform doesn't vote the way they want them to vote. So it's bad. They didn't seem to have this problem in 2020 with Facebook or Twitter. It wasn't until after Elon Musk bought Twitter that they started having issues with it. I mean, it's they are the ones that can't handle a diversity of thought. They can't. They have to try and shut it up. And that's what this guy's talking about. What they do is they will vilify you. They will other you and essentially call you evil. That's what they use to justify their tactics in trying to shut you down.
Is all the same as what the Nazis did. Absolutely ridiculous. And also pretending like there's been no actual criticism leveled at gaming journalists. That's also so disingenuous. And
I know I talk about politics a little bit in this video, but you got to understand the tactics and the way they speak and the way they treat the other people. It's all the same. It's the same mindset. It's the same groupthink. It perfectly overlaps.
and it's not just the
In fact, I'd be willing to bet that these same people vote for all the same party because it's the same disease.
writers or game developers who should be paying attention. It's anyone who dares to speak up or dreams of a culture that embraces everyone. Because these lists will only stop when
The culture that they try to build, that they say embraces everyone, does not embrace everyone. It only embraces people who have the same mindset. If you step out of line and think something differently just for a moment, you're dead to them. Doesn't embrace everyone.
every voice is hushed, every challenge put out, and the bonfire of dissent is as complete as that old fire in the square. Oh my gosh, bro. What?
I know.
What's wrong with this guy?
Yes, he's...
Again, reader, we need to douse this fire before it spreads. So he then goes on to complain about YouTube channels specifically. Let's focus on his insane comparisons of gamers to Nazis though. I've actually seen a similar tactic before, that being when armchair activists try to gaslight people into thinking that something they personally dislike is a much bigger issue than it really is, and may even lead to physical harm. It's really disgusting how willing these people are to fearmonger and gaslight others. He goes on to say, "Listen to me, reader. Really hear the real me from the other side of your screen." Oh my gosh, this is so lame. Really hear the real me from the other side of your screen. I'll admit at this point in writing I had to stop. For far too long I sat there wondering where to go next. Like an idiot, I thought I'd start listing off examples of how Gamergate's integrity, or rather the lack of it, has been on full display this past year. I began rehashing the same tired arguments about how their biggest mouthpieces have lied, manipulated, and spun their narratives about censorship where there was none.
I would
Or
have
that
loved to have
mythical
seen that.
forced diversity they're always going on about, even though it doesn't actually
That's the one thing these guys never do is provide any sort of examples to back up their claims.
exist. But in reflection, I must realize then I'd be doing exactly what they wanted. I would be playing their game. And honestly, if I went any further, if I linked to their content just to tear it apart for you or for my own selfish employ, well, I'd feel like I was part of their machine.
It sounds like he just didn't want to do it because there was nothing to it. That's what it sounds like. He's just making this long-winded excuse.
Giving them more clicks, more views, more of that sweet, twisted reach they crave. And I just can't do that today. I keep telling
cat is
myself
circling
we'll
in my
see through their
chair.
tricks.
She's about to jump
that will
up here.
recognize it for what it is, because they're not doing anything new. Surely, I keep thinking, surely people will remember yellow journalism, those headlines from the late 19th and early 20th centuries designed to rile up public fear, to paint immigrants and minorities as the enemy. Back then, the media used sensationalism to point fingers, to create scapegoats for society's problems. Now, Gamergate...
Nobody today is painting immigrants and minorities as the enemy. They may want to shore up immigration and make sure that we control the flow of people that come into this country. But at no point in time are we saying the immigrants and the minorities are enemy. Maybe the politicians. But if there's anybody riling up public fear All you have to do is look at social media today and see the reaction of all the women and men reacting to Trump being elected. They are so brainwashed. They think they think people are going to come for them in the middle of the night. There was one black lady who's like, "Oh Lord, why'd you vote for him? I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning a slave." Seriously, those people are brainwashed because the media, whether it be games journalists or the political mainstream media, constantly rile up public fear about what the other people are doing, because if they told them the truth, they'd be out of a job, because your public that you're talking to would be like, "Oh, well, that's not bad." No, you've got to scare them. And it's working. It is. It works to their base. Their base is terrified. What they usually accuse you of doing, it's projection. They're doing the exact same thing, and they just don't want to admit it, or they can't really see it because they're too fucking stupid and mentally gone. Who knows?
Does the same thing, only with video game news. Man, so pressed over video game news. It's just a convenient excuse to mask the real target, marginalize people. The goal is obvious, isn't it? Stir up hatred, dragging clicks with lies, and feed off the outrage bubbling up beneath the surface of our actual society. And when you scroll through their posts online, you won't help but notice the performance of moral panic they put on. It's the same old script used to demonize LGBTQ+ people or vilify women as deviants. How many times will you see someone push an argument, dare I say an agenda, that trans people are somehow dangerous or harmful to children? But let's be clear, this is just a tactic. They don't actually care about anyone's safety or well-being. They're only concerned with their own narratives.
You know what I'm concerned about? My own well-being. My family's own well-being. That's what I'm concerned about. I don't care about somebody else's well-being. I don't. If you're a family, if you're part of my family, I care about your well-being. That's the way it should be. You care about yourself. You take care of your own house. Make sure your own house is in order before you start worrying about anybody else's.
Don't find them taking any meaningful action to help anyone. They're just using games as a backdrop because that's all they really know. This isn't about protecting anyone. It's about creating fear and scapegoating those who threaten their narrow worldview. Okay, look, this guy is clearly like very weird, unhinged individual.
Yes,
but
he
to be
is.
fair, sometimes people in this sort of gaming discourse do lie about things too.
Yep.
I have seen like some manipulative rage bait with just like false information out there on occasion.
You have bad actors on both sides. I mean, you will. You'll have people who rage bait just because they want the views and the clicks. So there is a monicum of truth to that. They're using it to paint everybody that. If you've seen the articles that Kotaku and some of these other game journalists put out, it's pure bait, because Alyssa Mercante even stated, and I think whether it's DMs or it came out a while back when she had interviewed this dev, and she kind of misrepresented his words, that, she puts out things purposely to rage bait people because she needs the clicks.
The thing is, people like Jake never acknowledge the very legitimate criticisms that people have, which is by far the majority of discourse going on. Instead, they will either lie themselves or just do extreme cherry picking. Then he says, let's circle back to Dragon Age the Veilguard, shall we? It's a prime example of how criticism can be cloaked in a veneer of respectability. These so-called critics, quote unquote, will insist they're not against the inclusion of diverse identities, but are merely pointing out flaws in the writing. It's almost laughable.
I'm against the inclusion of diverse identities. If you're talking about the 72 different genders that was magically invented over the past 10 years, I'm against that because it's stupid. I am against that level of inclusion of diverse identities. Now, if you want to include a black person or whatever, hey, that's fine. You want to include a woman, hey, that's fine. Now, I will admit, if you're making a movie in Africa or a video game in Africa, I will understand if you don't include a white person. If you make a medieval type game or TV show in an area where you would rarely see, if at all, any black people or minority characters, then I would expect not to see any. Don't put some in there just for diversity's sake. Like, Netflix changing the Queen of England black, or trying to create Cleopatra and making her black. It's very tiresome having to constantly push back and fight on this, but it has to be done.
It's like the attacks I've faced, where they claim to criticize my opinions. The truth is that they're just really lashing out at something for representing what they despise. How is that laughable? It's completely fair to point out the issues with the writing. The writing's freaking terrible. The representation's terrible too. If this guy thinks that LGBT people deserve the representation in Veilguard and not something better, he's the one insulting them, really.
So Tosh, who's non-binary in the Veilguard, is a very bad representation of non-binary people. If that's what you want, if that's how you act, maybe it's not bad representation. Maybe that is how they act, how they think. Maybe that's perfectly correct representation. I don't know. But all I can tell you is it's annoying as fuck. At least in the clips that I've seen, because I promise you, I am not giving them my money to play that game.
And regarding him personally, I don't care about this guy. I'm just reading this article because, once again, it was like what's in the news today regarding him calling gamers Nazis. I'd be happy living my life never knowing who this guy is. And I'll probably forget who he is shortly after making this video. Prior to release, these culture warriors had been churning out hate content for months, practically foaming at the mouth at the mere whiff of anything resembling quote-unquote wokeness in the game. Suddenly, they're the knights of literacy integrity, waving their swords for storytelling excellence. And when I point out the glaringly obvious political motivations behind their tirades, they brush me off, insisting it's all the craft. It's as if they think we can't see the strings being pulled behind the Gamergate curtain. This guy's so overdramatic. Oh my gosh, man. The last 3 days, I feel like I've read nonstop cringe from people like this. Sorry, I think, grown tired of the label Gamergate. It implies something unique and original, but in truth, it obscures the mundanity of what they actually are. Well, since the very beginning of this whole
Man, somebody got their thesaurus out.
Gamergate 2 thing, I've said multiple times in videos that I think it's actually unwise to use that label because it's clearly what the corpos want. They literally want a Gamergate 2 so they can keep writing slop like this and then trying to grift off it. Whether that's through things like them asking for donations or trying to get government grants, both of which...
That's how they live off of this. We were saying earlier this year, they are trying to create Gamergate 2. They need the traffic, they need the clicks, they need the investment money because a lot of these gaming websites were dying.
Are things that have factually happened. That said, I don't believe that this guy is tired of using the label Gamergate. I think he loves using it. He's used it so many times in this write-up. He's one of the people propagating it at this point. Now finally, in his second to last paragraph, he complains about how gamers are boycotting things. I guess, for example, referring to things like DI detected, Sweet Baby Ink detected, etc, etc. And there's something hilarious about some armchair activists complaining about people who are partaking in a boycott. In other words, doing real activism. Dude and people like Dude are getting outplayed at their own game. We've seen a great example of this play out multiple times in the Hoyoverse community, where thousands of armchair activists claim that they'd boycott Hoyoverse games, but they never really did. It's all just
They probably never really played the game.
Fake for social media points. At least gamers who are involved in this sort of discourse and calling out companies like Ubisoft, for example, are really backing up the words that they say, and in fact not buying any more of their corporate slop. And in this final closing,
I don't plan to buy any more Ubisoft games. As much as I love Assassin's Creed Black Flag, I'm never going to buy another Assassin's Creed game, at least not right now. It would have to drastically change. And BioWare, I'm not going to be buying another game from you as well. The same people who made games 10 years ago or 15 years ago that you loved, they are not making those same games today. The IP may be the same, but it's a different group of people. And that's part of the problem because the skill level of these people drastically are different. They can't do it. Like I said, they are so wrapped up in identity politics. That's all they see. And they cannot create a good product or good story.
Paragraph. He just repeats the same stuff he's already said over and over. Man's a broken record on repeat. Before we end this video, there's something else really funny I want to take a look at. The section where he said prior to release, these culture warriors had been churning out hate content for months. Let's see what he's linking to. And we can see a tweet with over 6,900 likes that says, I feel like years ago, if I looked up a new game for a gameplay on YouTube, I'll just get gameplay or let's plays. Now it's all just controversy and drama. Why is everything doomer and ragebait nowadays? So tired.
The let's plays are theirs, but they don't get views. People calling out the bullshit, that gets views. I mean, as much as you may hate it, it gets clicks. Now that has led to rage baiting and people, grifting off of it, but critical videos do get views much more so than, unfortunately, let's plays and positive videos.
Including a few screenshots of videos posted, and the videos range from 11 hours ago to...
But I can tell you right now, this video from Asmongold, I've watched it. He's not outright just hating the game because of LGBT. I mean, he's talking about the reviews and pointing out, hey, they're all saying the same bullshit. Return to form, return to form, return to form, like I mentioned earlier in this video.
2 days ago. And none of this is evidence of so-called hate content being churned out for months. It's just some dude's random tweet. Is that really the most compelling evidence this person could link to? This is another...
Because they can't prove the points that they're trying to make. They can't.
that I've seen from disingenuous armchair activists. They'll link to like some tweet that has an opinion and use that as so-called evidence against someone that they personally dislike. Obviously that's absurd, and it shows how weak their arguments are. I'd also love to know how he's defining quote-unquote hate content, because it's really coming off like if you criticize the corporate narrative, then he's just gonna say you're hating. I wouldn't be surprised if you say something he agrees with, he'd refer to you as a critical thinker. Anyways, that's my opinion on this stuff.
Probably.
Let me know what you think about it.
The vast majority of people who hate these haters, they're just critics pointing out things they don't like in the game. That's the vast majority of these people. But they can't handle someone disagreeing with them, so they try to label them in the most negative fashion possible to try to delegitimize the opinions that these people have. So anyway, that's all I got for you today, guys. I just want to see what this video was about. Let me know what you think down below. Do you agree with Hero Hey? Do you not agree with them? If you like this video, hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more content, and I'll talk to you guys next time.